Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Hello everybody, how you doing? This is Ryan Burns here at the Hyper-Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, known to all of you as Hero Paranormal. We look for the individuals with the best interests, the most augmented donations to the field through either proximity of research or what they have going on currently. And this particular individual who we have on the podcast tonight is, he's a rock star. He's awesome. He's a resident of Rio Rancho, New Mexico. He's the director of Civilian Intelligence News Service. Not only that, he is somebody who's helped me in the past, whether he knows it or not. He manages UFO News, Area 51 Dreamland, and that's how he's helped me. And he also has a YouTube channel. If you don't know who I'm talking about yet, you will soon enough. We're talking about Norio Hayakawa. Truly one of the most honest researchers in the field, calls it like it is, and doesn't sugarcoat anything. His honesty is actually very refreshing. So I can't wait to hit him with all kinds of questions. I know he's going to have answers too. And before we get to that, we have to mention my own shameless self-promotion, I guess, and the promotion of the podcast, because it's important to me to keep it going and carve away time and try to do so in a way that keeps up with the pace of the fields that we're following, which lately is pretty quick. And if you haven't had a chance to, go to heroparanormal.com, check it out, buy a hat, buy a t-shirt. Don't be scared of the donate button. It helps more than you'll ever know, whether it's $1, $5, $10. You have the option to do a recurring or a one-time. And also check out our research project. And I say our because it's really me, but I have caretakers there on site and security full-time, and that's not cheap. And it is spacewolfresearch.com, located in the Shapeshifter corridor of the Uinta Basin of Utah. We are doing our best to seek and find the true reason for the anomalies in the area. And there's a bunch of them. It has been pretty eye-opening so far. So check that out. That also has a donate button. Throw $1 or $2 there. It would help more than you could ever imagine as well. Back to Norio. He is a mastermind of this genre, and he's been so helpful to me in the past when I've been asking questions about Area 51, Dreamland, and the likes. Extremely knowledgeable, extremely honest, and just an all-around good guy. Can't wait to get to it. So buckle up, pour a cup, and it's going to be a heck of a ride with Norio. So here he comes. Norio, welcome to the Hyper-Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, my man.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm glad to be talking with you today.
You know, I have to commend you because you are one of the most honest. So often, this field is absolutely cluttered with, for lack of a better word, a lot of BS. And what I've found is you navigate that pretty well. You call BS on the things that are not real or relevant, which is 90% of it, and you focus on the 10%. And I really wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much for your kind words, and because I am definitely interested in bringing out reason and logic when we talk about things that we don't know much about. And that's why I've always maintained my position as a neutral person as far as things are concerned, and so I've been doing this research on the unknown, and in particular the so-called unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is UAP, which is a much better word than UFOs or UFO phenomenon. But basically, UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, I believe is a real phenomenon. No question about it. I've been studying this for close to 60 years already. I began this whole thing in 1961. So, Ryan, I've been doing this, and I have seen things. I'm talking about, things that happened in the UFO community and all this things associated with this weird field of study.
I know you have, and you've actually helped me in the past, whether you're aware of it or not. You've actually really, I know that you manage a lot of different websites and YouTube channels and things of that nature, and Dreamland has been an extremely helpful resource to me living here in Nevada, and it's been a great help. In addition, I think that your insight, with nearly 60 years in the field, the UFO community oftentimes gets pretty muddled as far as what they consider reality. And that's to be expected in some organizations or communities that are interested in something that's not supposed to exist, or that society is completely tossed to the side or believes is irrelevant, when in reality it may be the most important question or phenomenon that we have to deal with. But I think you do so from a very realistic standpoint. And talking of the unknown, I agree with you that UAP is a lot better word than UFO. Can you kind of tell our listeners the reasons behind that, and in your experience, why that is a more acceptable term?
Well, basically, Ryan, the term UFO, which was coined by the United States Air Force many years ago, has become the standard term, but it has terrible misunderstanding, because unidentified flying object is a good, interesting term, but it already assumes that these things are flying, and it already assumes that we're talking about solid physical objects. So both of these things, like flying and object, are terrible choice of words. But we have been using UFOs as a term to describe this phenomenon, but in actuality, I would rather prefer to use UFP, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, as opposed to UFO phenomenon, because UFO already connotes that whatever we have been seeing are definitely flying, in the sense that we're talking about flying through some kind of propulsion system. And also, I hate the use of the word object, because we have not yet determined whether they are objects or not. And so this reason, I highly commend Dr. Jacques Vallée, who stated many years ago, and he has not changed his position. Dr. Jacques Vallée, who I consider one of the most reliable authorities on this phenomenon, he said that UFOs may not actually be flying, nor could they be objects. So that is one possibility. So this is the reason that I like the word UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, rather than UFOs, because UFOs immediately connotes some kind of a spacecraft from outer space, and that's the almost 99% of the connotation of the word UFO that is associated with something from outer space, like spacecraft from outer space, extraterrestrial. So this is a very limited term, and for this reason, I commend the recent United States Navy's correction of the word UFO. The U.S. Navy, talking about the so-called tic-tac UFOs and pilot favor and the sightings in 2004, the Nimitz incidents and so on. The U.S. Navy recently changed the terminology to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, rather than using the word UFO, which I commend this.
I agree with you on all counts, Norio, and I can't agree more with you as far as Jacques Vallée. Talk about a class act. I had the blessing to meet him earlier in life, and almost immediately he, started sending me Christmas cards. He is exactly what he seems. He is sincere. He's a very, very kind soul. I haven't met a shaman or yoga instructor or even a religious authority that has exuded that kind of sincerity. And he's definitely, his efforts in the field are very appreciated. And I agree with you that for some reason in the 50s and 60s, this whole spacecraft, UFO, I don't know what to call it. It's almost like a whole genre of its own, took on a whole life of its own. And the UAP phenomena is completely different than that, because we're not necessarily talking about something that fits in our spectrum or that we can put in a box. I really like that you have mentioned, is this a paraphysical, extra-dimensional entity? And could you go into a little bit of that?
Well, the reason I began using the word paraphysical is because, to me, there's no question that this phenomenon exists. But I have come to the conclusion many years ago that we may be dealing with a phenomenon that may be intruding into our physical dimension from another dimension. In other words, I'm a firm believer, actually, since around 1978, when I began to devour books by, Dr. Vallée and even people like John A. Keel, who was another great researcher. And in the late 70s, John A. Keel began espousing the theory that we may not be talking necessarily about physical extraterrestrial phenomenon, but rather some kind of a manipulative extra-dimensional phenomenon intruding into our physical dimension. And these the perpetrators of this phenomenon are appears to be sentient. In other words, they have a feeling, or they know what's good or bad. And so I am a believer that there are probably in this wide cosmos many countless number of sentient extraterrestrial paraphysical entities that have the ability to temporarily intrude into our physical dimension and appearing to the observers as a 100% physical phenomenon to the observer. And what I have been saying, especially in the last few years, is that this phenomenon seemed to select in advance its observer of this phenomenon. And, you know, I get a lot of influence from Dr. Jacques Vallée in this regard, but it's my contention that 100% physical object will be very, very difficult to maintain its shape as the object travels, or even entities travel at the speed of light for many, many years without drastically changing its appearance and the composition. And so this is the reason why I came to the conclusion that somehow these sentient entities have the potential to suddenly materialize, and that's the key word. I have seen a lot of footages of so-called UFO phenomenon, but and then I have talked to so many people, but basic characteristic is that this phenomenon does not seem to be able to survive in our physical atmosphere or physical dimension, except for a few minutes or a few seconds at a time. And but yet they seem to have the power to affect our, for example, radar, and they seem to paraphysically leave some kind of a residue temporarily. Mm-hmm. But it's maybe a wild speculation, but I have been considering this because I have seen lots of things. I mean, as far as talking to so many people, and as you know, Ryan, I live in the state of New Mexico, and I live in outside of Albuquerque, in Rio Rancho, which is only about 3 hours drive from another interesting place in New Mexico called the Dulce area, the Hickory Apache Reservation. And I have actually talked to so many folks over there in the Indian Reservation who have told me of strange experiences they had. Yet, there is no evidence whatsoever that there is any kind of physical extraterrestrial underground base in Dulce, New Mexico. And this applies to all other topics. We're talking about this phenomenon that we can't get hold of so far. And, so what else can I say? It's an amazing phenomenon, but yet so many people are deceived by con artists and hoaxers who claim unsubstantiated claims about things that's relevant to this phenomenon, and create their own ridiculous stories. And that's the whole problem in contemporary ufology, as far as I'm concerned. There's people talk about Area 51 and all that stuff, but there's absolutely no physical evidence whatsoever, or even documentary evidence whatsoever, that Area 51 is or has ever been associated with aliens or alien technology. It's all talk and no solid evidence. But yet, in this field, there are many con artists who deceive people and profit from people's gullibility in believing in, alien-related things concerning Area 51 and even Roswell, Dulce, New Mexico, you name it. All these places are interesting and are important in many sense. In fact, I am a firm believer in the importance of Area 51 as United States' foremost vital military research, development, and testing area for national defense. Mm-hmm. No question about it. But along comes, all other garbage that has nothing to do with this facility. And unfortunately, there are many people who make profit out of people's gullibility. Bob Lazar and this and that, and all this crap. See, and so that's hurting the authentic research on this phenomenon, which is real. The phenomenon itself is real, no question about it. But you can go from one extreme to the other. Now, I knew actually a gentleman by the name of William Cooper, or Bill Cooper, for many years. And Bill Cooper started his career in ufology by proclaiming that he had seen things and he had information that the government has been keeping the flying saucer technology secret and all that blah, blah, blah. And he went on for a few years. But I give credit to Bill Cooper because he admitted later on that what he was given, the information, was probably disinformation. And so he admitted that he was wrong. And that, but on the other hand, he went to the other extreme and started saying that that there are no, aliens or flying saucers and so on, which is true in a sense, but he has to. I wish he knew that there's other explanations for this phenomenon, and that's the exodimensionality of this phenomenon, which he unfortunately didn't talk about. All he talked was nuts and bolts ufology, and but we can't blame William Cooper for what he said, because he was affected by a lot of other con artists who talked about crazy stuff, and he just combined all the things that he learned from people like Jordan Maxwell and many other researchers, and he combined everything methodically and cleverly, and he produced a book called the Behold the Pale Horse, which was an interesting book. But towards the end of his career, he definitely began to admit that many of the things he'd been saying was probably not true. I commend him for that. But unfortunately, he passed away due to the disastrous incident that took his life, due to mainly to his own fault.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I love Bill for all the reasons you said. Bill was definitely at his book was amazing, and it was an international blockbuster. However, it was unfortunate that I think that Bill's own seeds that he planted were the cause of his demise. And unlike many self-promoting people, I think Bill had altruistic goals. However, he was, like you said, skewed by others who didn't take this thing as seriously as you do, or they promote the ET hypothesis with origins of that are just wacky. And I think the actual physical extraterrestrial spacecraft piloted and that you've mentioned, there's a lot of people that try, and this is kind of a human condition, Norio. Like we're looking at something we don't understand and we're trying to put it in human boxes. And I really believe that these lights, these UAPs, these paraphysical entities, people tend to pollute this with humanism. And Jacques Vallée, yourself, and many others, well, not that many, I wish there was more, have cut through the muck and seen a more clear path of where this reality really is. I think like minds are often drawn together, much like the phenomena attracts the observer, like you mentioned. And it's interesting that these lights in the sky, these paraphysical, dimensional entities are able to manipulate space-time. And I think when I have seen them, I'm much like yourself, I have this feeling that everything makes sense when I see them. But like you said, it's so short, and it's like gold through your fingers. It's gone before you can actually pinpoint it, anchor it, and throw a human box around it, because it's paraphysical. It is not physical. It may not be nuts and bolts. I believe that there is a concerted effort among humanity to try to weaponize this, reverse engineer this, whatever you want to call it, because that's what we do. We try to do that. And the humanism is what's ruining the phenomenon. And I really believe that these historically would have been known as the watchers or the calculators. They can manipulate space and time. I think they're sentient, celestial intelligences. And I love your word paraphysical, because that's just so dead on. It's just so dead on. And I think that you're right. Maybe what we're seeing is just the trace energies left by them.
Thank you for your, kind words about my choice of the word paraphysical, because for a long time I was thinking of using the word paranormal, but I told myself that the word paranormal has a very, very weird, it brings a weird connotation among a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I chose the word paraphysical, because it's what it is. It's because we're talking about instant materialization and almost instant dematerialization. And, many times these objects, or the phenomenon that appears to be object, seem to fly away at unbelievable speed, but to me it is just a show to deceive us, and no way is it possible to produce that kind of a scenario through any kind of propulsion system, because what it is it's absolute dematerialization and materialization. And so this is something that interests me. And, right now, many people are talking about, I'm glad that this whole nonsense about storming Area 51 has finished already, because that was one of the most ridiculous things I ever heard. And, in actuality, there are people that take advantage of the gullibility of other people, and for example, I've always been interested in Bob Lazar's story, but in the end, there's nothing to show. There's nothing to show for in the Bob Lazar story, but yet, people who promote the Bob Lazar story keep promoting him, and I believe that all these things is relative to making fame and actually profit through the use of unsubstantiated stories and claims. And so it's a dangerous thing in a way, because look at the recent, as I told you about the event called Storm Area 51 or Storming Area 51, which which was a total flop. It was a total disaster in the sense that Lincoln County spent thousands and thousands of dollars to prepare for that crazy event, and it became the money became the center of contention, and there's still talk of Lincoln County suing the promoters of this Storm Area 51, Mary Roberts and so on. And so this is just a weird thing, but it shows that today in the United States, especially in America, there is a cult of the alien. It's almost like a religion. So I call this, the movement, the cult of the alien. And look at all those crazy folks who came to Rachel, Nevada, last month, dressed up in alien costumes and all these things. And, they were expecting thousands and thousands or even tens of thousands of people, but yet only about 3,000 people at most showed up. And it was a total disaster financially for even business like Little Alien, which lost a lot of money through their own fault for accommodating to this crazy festival or Storm Area 51 idea. And the Storm Area 51 idea came from the continuous belief that Area 51 had something to do with aliens, and that the government is, keeping aliens hostage over there. And, this kind of a concept came from unsubstantiated stories told by people like Bob Lazar, and even promoted by what I call debonair raconteur, which means a dashing, skilled storyteller. Debonair raconteur is it's a good word that describes somebody who can tell good stories and look believable, but it's just a story. And so I kind of partially blame the Bob Lazar story, and it had a deep impact on some people that started the Storm Area 51 movement because they were brainwashed about this, that there are aliens at Area 51 and so on. So there are people who should be blamed for bringing up this nonsensical belief in aliens and physical aliens that are roaming our Earth right now. This kind of stuff, And so, to me, this is all ridiculous. But this does not mean that the UFO phenomenon does not exist. In fact, as I told you over and over, I'm a firm believer in the reality of the UFO phenomenon, but the UFO phenomenon must not necessarily be associated with extraterrestrial physical visitation at all. There's no proof for that. And so this is the reason why I agree totally with Dr. Jacques Vallée and John A. Keel that this is still unknown phenomenon that we are perplexed with. And it probably have existed since time immemorial. It's not just a modern thing. From time immemorial, people have been seeing some strange things in the sky quite often, and we still don't have any explanation for it. And anybody that says that they have the answer, such as we're being visited by aliens, is just totally out of reality.
Absolutely. There's a lot with the Area 51 event. It is almost as convoluted and murky as the entire UFO culture and the science surrounding it, because from the human perspective, I think we have a lot of powerful forces, whether they be human or mostly otherwise, and it's difficult because this, and I don't want to call it paranormal because, as you said, Norio, this has a horrible connotation attached to it. I've attached it to the name of my podcast, and my, because it used to be okay, and now there's so many attachments have gathered around it that are negatively connotated, much like the UFO word, that there's a point where you just want to shed that skin and grab something new in that trek towards the truth. And I believe you're correct about the Matty Roberts phenomenon, which I believe was used for deflection from other world events at the time. Because what are the odds that somebody posts this, which has absolutely no relevant meaning at an awkward hour, and just throws it out there? Now, we all know Google and other search engines, algorithms, and things of the like are able to, even YouTube, which you and I are very, connected to and aware of, they are able to diffuse these things as quickly as they start. I can't help but wonder if the Matty Roberts phenomenon, that viral sensation, was just nothing but a deflection from other world events, which there were many at the time that were very much more important, and all of a sudden all of our mainstream media, which anybody who watches that I feel sorry for, because unless it's a local news channel and you're keeping track of what's happening in your community, they have absolutely no relevance. There's probably something else going on that we are not, the majority of the population, I should say, is not aware of. I showed up, I call it the calm before the storm. I showed up the day before to do an interview with Telemundo. They needed somebody who spoke Spanish, and I speak Spanish. And I had to leave for other things, but I didn't see the actual storm. I got there the calm before the storm. When you realize that these are more likely paraphysical, sentient beings, if you can even call them beings, because I even think that again, I'm ruining this with my humanization. It's very, I believe you're correct about the Matty Roberts phenomenon. And although I think people are doing things for the right reasons, it's a deflection from other world events. And I wonder, when I drove out there the day before it all started, I was amazed. There was a traffic jam, and it wasn't people that were going to the event. I was stuck between Bearcats, those big Ford SWAT vehicles, ambulances, emergency responders, police vehicles. I believe that there were more of those, like you said, than actual people that showed up at the event. And that's interesting, because that just goes to show that this Area 51, this restricted area where deadly force is authorized, people were showing up to that. I mean, put that into perspective. And I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, where am I going? What in the world am I doing to speak with Telemundo, to, kind of like give my opinion, which was not at all at least shown in this country. However, I think it's very interesting to raise that consciousness of that people would actually consider jumping a fence that is at the very heart of everything this country stands for. And getting back to Bill Cooper, and I hate to do this, but he kind of, his book kind of did the same thing. He attacked this straight on, and he attacked it much like that movement. I'm all for having thoughts that are not like the mainstream, but when you attack the very core values of something that you are a part of, it could become very dangerous, as it did for Bill. And I thank Bill because, much like you said, Norio, with his works, I got so interested in Bill, Mystery Babylon, heard every hour of every talk that he ever said. Interestingly enough, as I investigated much of his works, everything from government corruption to religious Illuminati groups that supposedly run the world, as I investigated this, I was actually shown that by seeking, I found other answers. Now, Bill didn't have all the right answers. He didn't. In fact, the ones that were most important to me were completely opposite, day and night. But he did kind of get up on the podium and point everything out. He went after everybody. And sadly, we know how it all ended. I wanted to ask you, Norio, I think he was a great man. I really do. And did you personally know Bill? I've talked to others that have, and they have mixed emotions. Like, he's a great guy, but took it a little too far.
Yes, in fact, I helped him organize his first public UFO lecture appearance at Hollywood High School with several helpers that organized Bill's first appearance. And he definitely had a charismatic personality, and he was a powerful speaker, and he captivated a lot of people. And so in the beginning, everybody thought he was just so tremendous and charismatic personality, and everybody was affected. But towards the end of his career, he just went into another direction and started his one-man militia. And I knew him, and I'm a type of a person that accepts persons as they are. So I knew Bill Cooper as, he liked to drink, and he gets very obnoxious when he drinks, and he starts a fight with other people, even during conventions. Sometimes he got drunk and he started arguing and fighting, actually, just fighting with other speakers and so on. So I knew him, but I accepted him as he was. And anybody that says that Bill Cooper had no influence or no meaning is definitely doesn't know what they're talking about, because there's no question that Bill Cooper had a tremendous influence in thousands of people who listened to his speeches and to listen to his shortwave radios and so on. He did affect a lot of people. He was a tremendous influence on people. And, this doesn't mean that everything is good that he influenced, but it means that you cannot discount Bill Cooper's role at all. And so I talked to many people, including people like Don Ecker, who was, the editor of UFO magazine in Los Angeles. Don Ecker had a tremendous dislike of Bill Cooper, and I understand because he can't see a person. Don Ecker couldn't see Bill Cooper as a person that he was, and he only saw the obnoxious side of Bill Cooper. So naturally, Don Ecker had a bad image of Bill Cooper, and to me, Bill Cooper he's really wasn't a bad person. He tried to be good, no question about it. He tried to be a good person and he tried to be kind, but many times certain people cannot accept criticism, and so certain people have a short temper, such as Bill Cooper. But we have to look beyond beyond the fault and accept him as who he was, and so that's my position. And as far as William Cooper. Now, the other person that I have problem with, and this person still lives, and his name is Richard C. Doty, who used to work as an AFOSI personnel in Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, for many years. But it's my contention that that's the kind of person that's more dangerous, because Richard C. Doty still goes around talking about nonsense items, and he claims he was part of the government's disinformation program, but I am very doubtful that he was working under the direction of a government, but rather he was working for himself in private. Even though he worked at Kirtland Air Force Base, I believe he had a plan to brainwash people, and he brainwashed people like Paul Benowitz of Albuquerque into believing that there's a secret base in northern New Mexico and so on, and this same Richard Doty even went to the Storm Area 51 event. And then he was interviewed by a Travel Channel program in the middle of the desert. And then I watched that 1-hour Travel Channel program called Storming Area 51. It was broadcast a couple of weeks ago. But I was surprised that here comes good old Richard Doty uttering the same nonsense. This time he's saying that he was a very important official at Area 51 and so on. And so this is the type of people that are very dangerous, that can brainwash people, and it's unfortunate that this kind of people still goes around the nation and becomes the limelight of speakers and so on. And so I believe that he is a self-claimed disinformation agent. And the dangerous thing about people like Richard Doty is that he is very good in brainwashing people, and he's brainwashing even gullible people such as Linda Howe, who lives in Albuquerque. Linda Howe is a crazy old lady that has been brainwashed by people like Richard C. Doty. And, so people in this field of ufology can't escape from the bad habit of associating everything with aliens. For example, Linda Howe associates every single cattle mutilation to aliens. And once you do that, you have to continue doing. Once you start telling exaggerated, lies, okay, you have to keep on that same lie. And this is the reason why people like George Knapp, who actually made a secondary career out of promoting Bob Lazar's story. He was only one of the few people that continuously help promote Bob Lazar's story. And once you do that, you can't escape. No matter how many years pass on, you're associated with that thing, so he has to keep doing it. This is the reason why recently, just a few days ago, I got the information that there's a new book coming out on October 15th called Dreamland, an autobiography by Bob Lazar. That's going to be on sale, and guess who is the writer of the foreword to this book? George Knapp. And because, like I said, once you are associated with something, it's very difficult to distance one person from the other person that you have association with. And so this is a very unfortunate thing. And, as I said, George Knapp is maybe a good newscaster, but once he got associated with Bob Lazar, he had to keep repeating the same thing, and even today he has to be a spokesman and a handler of Bob Lazar's extraterrestrial tales, which I call them tales. It sounds, his story may be interesting, but bottom line is it's just so unsubstantiated, and it's just like a storytelling. Just like a guy by the name of Bill Schneider, he was a good storyteller. So in this world of ufology, there are many, many good storytellers, or what I call raconteurs, that people who are skilled in telling stories. This is a weird field of ufology. We have to face this every day because there are so many gullible folks who watch programs like Ancient Aliens on TV and just believe everything that is being told in that nonsensical program, And this is a very dangerous thing in a way that belief system can eventually even affect society. Mm-hmm. And if it's a belief system that is unbalanced, there's a danger of such belief system held by a lot of people that can actually change the social structure. So that's why my main concern.
This is a weird field of ufology. You can make enemies without even wanting to. I've had people call me angry because I haven't unfriended others based on their beliefs or opinions. And then they unfriended me, quite literally, for being open to all sides. As you know, I consider Jacques Vallée, yourself, George Knapp, and Jeremy Corbell friends. I try to be open to all sides, but I do appreciate opinions without judgment. I think that's important. It's difficult because we are two humans having a conversation about something that's, in my opinion, not human, or at least not physically human. And I think it's very interesting that you bring up many of the things that you brought up, because I think a lot of times we're connected by whatever reason. I don't think anything happens. You hear it all the time. It's super overplayed, but nothing happens by coincidence. And it's interesting that, Bill Cooper, people like Bill Cooper and people like Phil Schneider, there's a manipulation at hand here, both human and non-human possibly. And I think Bill Cooper's actually the reason I have the beliefs I do from a spiritual and almost religious standpoint, but not for the reasons he said. So I literally thank him for that. He was also absolutely right about many of the general beliefs in secret societies, much of what is in disinformation that is what is or isn't real. And I think people in high positions of power aren't there by accident. They are quite literally forces of nature, much like the UAPs or this, the lights in the sky that we're seeing. We're seeing something that is power or energy. And the after effects, could be more powerful than we know. When it comes to OSI, I'm not going to touch that. As you said, he was utilized. And it reminds me of the words that I got from a source of mine, of a scientist at the heart of shapeshifter territory in Utah. And he said, every time you look behind the veil or see something you shouldn't, you give something of yourself. And I think the important thing from a human standpoint, it's really hard for us humans. We have this thing called an ego, which it's trying to kill us. And if we can stay away from these narratives, isn't that humanism, or a lot of what can be said about, I think it's really interesting you mentioned the Dreamland book coming out October 15th with George Knapp, because a lot can be said by those who write the forewords of books, etc. As human beings, we are observers of something much larger than ourselves. And this is the reason throughout humanity, wars have been fought. And I'm glad you brought up Hollywood. The changing social structures and the media, they are able to sway. And, there's all sides of media, but they are able to sway these things. And sometimes I wonder, everything is not always as it seems. And I think that much of the phenomena that we are witnessing may be much greater than we are giving it credit for. People see a light in the sky, and what do they think? They think little green men. They're in a little metal saucer, and that's what it is. Well, I'm not so sure about that. And I want to kind of enter, I know that we're getting really, really short on time, but from the fruits of your own labor, Norio, and this is very difficult to ask, but do you think people like Phil Schneider, do you think this disinformation in the government has an agenda, or is this just disinformation to keep us away from truth?
Well, first of all, my belief is that we give too much credit to the government because I believe that the government is incapable of keeping secrets for too long. And we give too much credit to the government. And so just like Colonel John Alexander, I believe that there has not been any intentional cover-up of the UFO phenomenon by the government because, first of all, the government itself is being perplexed by this unsolved phenomenon. So anything that the government cannot explain is not going to be discussed by the government. In other words, that will seem to appear that the government is incapable, and the government certainly don't want to give the public the impression of being incapable of anything. So, to me, there's no intentional cover-up. It's just that they don't want to talk about it unless something is definitely proven. So that's my position. But, in the defense industries in the United States, there are many companies that use cover stories to confuse people. And the so-called UFO thing is a good cover story to conceal important matters or important technological developments that the government or the military has come up with. So, in doing so, in creating cover stories, the government could intentionally throw in some ridiculous items to confuse people. They could manipulate eccentric people's beliefs in some kind of thing that they could throw into the public to confuse people. And so this is what the whole thing is, that there are some people that are unwittingly being manipulated by the government, without even them knowing that they are being manipulated. So, that's important to understand this, because we are faced with the unknown, and we have always been faced with the unknown, and this mystery will never be solved by human hands. And that's my ultimate position. This is my ultimate position, and like I said, the reality of the UFO phenomenon, or the unidentified aerial phenomenon, is real. To me, it's real. Just like Dr. Jack Miller said, it's real. But to go beyond it is just not advisable, because we just don't have that much reliable information and substance to make up any conclusion about this strange phenomenon. And so this will remain this way forever until such day when those sentient entities themselves declare to us physically that they are here. And so until that time comes, which may never come, we just have to stay away from any kind of dangerous speculation about this phenomenon.
Absolutely, Norio. And I can't appreciate you enough living where you're at. I think the New Mexico landscape is possibly, if not the fulcrum of a lot of this. And I couldn't agree more with you with what you said about John Alexander. I met a guy at the highest levels of national security, and I don't think there are any other countries to worry about except maybe ourselves and Russia. But it's not for the reasons that we are told. And New Mexico, I have a close friend, her name is Stephanie Groh. She has family in New Mexico, and the things that she's told me and the beauty that is there, you're just so blessed to live right in the heart of this mystery. And I think it won't be solved by human hands, as you said, Norio. And human hands have tried and failed throughout all time. And I think this is, like you said, this is the reason humans have actually had wars and just, many, probably millions of people have died over people taking different opinions of something that the Egyptians, many have tried to encapsulate this in a human scenario and put it in boxes. And what I like about you, Norio, is you don't do that. I think that your knowledge of this is extreme, and the encapsulation that you said, paraphysical, that word is so monumental in my opinion. There are certain individuals who have a knowledge of this, a flame, if you will, that cannot be put out. And you are one of those flames that I constantly follow. I appreciate everything you've given to the community. Your honesty is so refreshing. It is amazing. And I just want to thank you for all your time and the time that you've taken today talking with me. Thank you, Noria.
Thank you so much, Ryan. We'll talk again sometime in the future.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Be blessed. Holy moly guacamole. Or in New Mexico, that's those spicy red peppers. And that's what I like about Norio. How can you not appreciate someone who is so candid with their opinion, yet explains that he is just a human being, and he's open-minded enough to accept others regardless of their opinions, based on their humanity as well. I try to remain friends with a lot of people, but won't change my friendships based on what others and their whims tell me to do. It's difficult, as Norio said, to have friends you can trust in this field. I have a lot of friends in this field, and maybe only one or two I can't trust. But we're still friends, or at least I hope we are. The ones you can't trust are usually the ones who have burned bridges time after time, asking for contacts, asking for whatever the case may be. The ones that take your material at every turn. Those who try mudslinging in your direction. usually for intangible, useless glory, like those falsely offered by fame, TV shows, and the like. Some of my quote-unquote friends, actually one is a guy and one is a girl, so this ego knows no gender. They have become like empty husks of humans who are only after fame and recognition. This is well known in the field, so I don't even have to name them. It's common knowledge in certain circles, and I wouldn't name them even if I could. I try to refrain from that type of behavior, and I try to remain friends with these people, but won't change. And sadly, they are their own worst enemies, so no one really has to attack them, and they will most likely destroy whatever they come into contact with. They will destroy what they consider their careers with their own knowledge and lack thereof. It's hard not to feel sorry for people like this, and, well, for those who accept them and include them in their productions, promotions, they are also delegitimized. I don't have a dog in the fight, so it's not my place. I guess I see the human side of them, which, however dwindling, still exists on some level. Much like Norio explained, we're all humans. We are trying to describe something which, to our best ability, does not appear human. And I absolutely love his description that they are paraphysical. Can't get enough of that. Quality individuals in the field, regardless of their pasts or backgrounds, are those who have more to offer than they take. Those who burn bridges at every turn eventually end up on islands of their own, with nowhere to go except their own egos haunting them. Whether that be through entity attachment, madness, a feverish need for attention, and that recognition that they know they don't deserve. Even if they did deserve it, recognition is not up to us. This is true spiritualization, and anyone who is after that or continually trying to redescribe themselves as the next hot thing or the messiah of the UFO world, or you get the idea, you know the people. These are the ones who are sadly not going to achieve. The best achievement we can do is giving to our fellow humans the knowledge that we so freely gain from these amazing celestial, paraphysical, thanks for that, Norio, and otherwise spectacular entities that fly our friendly skies and bestow upon our eyes the glorious and divine celestial aspects of this reality which we can't find in a regular existence. Those who are in this field, their lives are truly augmented by these amazing things taking place right above us. And it's understandable how, for all time in history, people have looked to the skies, pointed in awe, and asked larger questions than themselves. And that's the hard part, isn't it? Getting over yourself. So I'm wishing that everybody have the best of luck doing that, including myself. Now that I'm trying to do that, I will try to self-glorify myself, at least to some small extent, to pay the bills that are, and that reality we can't escape. If you haven't been to heroparanormal.com, check it out. Those who podcast themselves know it's not easy. It takes time, it takes money, it takes you away from your family and a lot of things that matter, but it also allows you to be a part of something and give something to the community that they would not have unless you're doing it. So I love the specific idea. I need to thank people like Greg Carlwood of the Higher Side Chats. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing this at all. I would like to thank people like Joe Rogan. Interestingly enough, Rogan gets heat sometimes for not liking Mencia. And that's another comedian who does nothing but steal other people's material. And he's full of, well, crap. I guess you could say Rogan's got a pretty good BS meter. Don't hold that against him. I don't blame him. Heck, we're all just human, right? So for those people that steal your material and they're full of crap, here's a little hint. Quit giving them material and start giving them a little crap. They might just back off. On that note, I would like to commend Norio for taking time, being a part of our lives, and sharing some of the wisdom he's gathered over 60 years in the field of ufology. Yeah, he was a friend to legends like Bill Cooper, many legends in fact. Please support Norio. You can see him on social media, Facebook. Go to Dreamland. Support him there. Support him anywhere that you see his name, and give him a thumbs up, a heads up that you appreciate his work. And he's not the only one. There's others I want to thank as well, other podcasters. If you haven't checked them out, check them out. One is Isaac, Illuminati Watcher, Lysop. You can find him all over the web. Social media, Instagram, you name it, he's there. Go to IlluminatiWatcher.com, and that's the guy. If there's anything Illuminati, he knows about it. Check out all his podcasts. He's definitely somebody you should support. Brings you everything that the media is doing and yet hiding before our very eyes. And while we're on this subject, Illuminati and such, never forget Leo Zagami. You can find him at leozagami.com. He's an info warrior connected with the Alex Jones Network. He's out there for the benefit of the people. And last but not least, check out the almighty Jay Parker. You can find him at Freedom's Lips, and he's all over the internet too. Great podcaster, great guy. And Gordon White, Rune Soup, all amazing. Check him. Oh, and I almost forgot. Definitely check out everything going on in the Uinta Basin, and that would be, it's all over the place, really. Check out all the usual suspects because they're at the same old thing, and check out the new and different spacewolfresearch.com. It is a new research facility where all the old school used to meet up, and that's because it had the best views of absolutely everything, 360 degrees. It's our research project we call spacewolfresearch.com. Something a little fun I do on the side. And last but not least, check out our gear. The Utah UFO Hunters are involved. Pick up a hat, pick up a t-shirt, pick up whatever you want. It all just kind of helps everything and shows the community what you're involved with, which is nothing but badassery. Also, check out the Utah UFO Hunters. They're on social media as well. We are there for all of you, and I just can't wait to bring you more. Stay tuned, and go to YouTube. Subscribe, Hero Paranormal, where all of our archives are absolutely free, except for the patron only, which can cost you as little as $1 a month. Find me a better deal than that, and I will bow out. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off.